So my children were watching a movie yesterday, and it was about Troy, one movie with Brad Pitt, and he is Achilles, and Achilles is a whacked out, selfish, egocentric kind of, he has some wisdom, but generally selfish soldier who was unbeatable because, you know, the story of Achilles being held upside down and dipped in holy water or the river or something, and nothing could harm him except that the Achilles heel. And I was telling him this morning about the truth about these things. One of the things is that you have Troy, which was a city with big walls, and it was safe inside of Troy, and Troy was really led by a good king, let's say, the goodness and rightness of awareness, the presence. It was a kingdom of peace and joy, let's say. They were not warring, they were not looking for wars with other civilizations, nor were they internally bad. It was a good king and a good kingdom. And then these, I think the Greeks or Spartans or whatever they were coming over, and they were angry for some reason. I think this time it was about a woman, princess or something. But the point is, they also came for the greed to try to take over the other man's kingdoms, right? Now, what you notice in this story is a couple of things. One is that, first of all, Trojan horse, the Trojan horse, which is really where we know Troy from for most of us, you know, the Trojan horse is the horse which they snuck in, or which was brought in voluntarily into the kingdom behind the safe doors of the wall and penetrated that safe kingdom. And then from inside the horse, these men came and took over the city because they could open up the gates from the inside and let the enemy in. Now, in a way, this Trojan horse story is really applicable and is an example of the mythological ways of describing the non-dual path, the spiritual path, the path of return home, and the path of corruption by the ego mind. In other words, if you allow any of these corrupt demonic thoughts, these systematic viruses that come in to overtake awareness, to overtake the clear space of joy and presence and love, and this would be a Trojan horse. Now, for most people, Trojan horses they're not even needed. I mean, most children are raised these days and for the last decennia by parents who don't even know anything about the enemy. They don't even know that the ego mind is the enemy. They themselves are inhabited by that ego consciousness, and that dominates their space and their lives. So for most children, it's not even a case of having a wall nor needing a Trojan horse to come in. You're just from birth on told right from you when you can first start talking, identify with the body, identify with the mind, start speaking as quickly as possible, going to school as quickly as possible, learning as much intellectual nonsense as possible. And so for most people, it's not a matter of ever having had really a safe wall anywhere, because the parents were not only introducing Trojan horses, if you wish, there was no need for Trojan horses because they were just bringing in all the mind stuff as fast as they could and encouraging the child to be corrupted. So there was no real safe kingdom. But in a way, their true awareness before the parents start assaulting with them could be considered the safe haven of awareness, the presence of the God space in the heart, without the mental interference of the thoughts and the concepts, becoming and emotional disturbances which become suppressed traumatic events in the unconscious. So they were safe, but they were then already invaded from birth. But for other people, for some children who grow up with parents who are busy with this from the moment the children are born and are living this kind of truth, it's more like the Trojan story, where there's a safe place to live and they're living, but then some point these children are looking at the YouTubes and they're looking at all the videos and all the stuff that's out there and all the friends that are engaging in this behavior and all the drugs, rock and roll and sex and all that stuff to corrupt them. And so that would be a Trojan horse, which is probably why the condom brand is also called a Trojan, right? But in a different twist. I won't go into that now, but the Trojan horse is basically something that lures you in, something which is usually arrogance or ignorance. which means that, for example, in the story of Troy, one of the sons said, "Don't take the horse in. Don't just burn the horse right here on the beach. We don't need a trophy from the Greeks." But of course, the elderly religious types, and including the father, had become lazy. They say, I think it is, vigilance is the price for eternal liberation, or for something like that. The point being that you have to stay vigilant. Always be aware of the trickster to come back into your castle. And so if you get a little bit arrogant, like, oh, the gods have given us this gift, and the gods are blessing us, and we're going to rule, and the gods will do it for us. No, the gods don't do anything for you. You have to be eternally vigilant. That's the price for real liberation, for endless liberation. The moment you think you can rest because you're enlightened, you're free, you're liberated, and you're whatever you want to call it, then the arrogance, that arrogance will fester again. It will become a little wound and will infect and then fester, and from the inside the Trojan horse will then again grow. And that's what these men did. The king allowed this Trojan horse to be brought behind the safe walls of the fortress, of the castles, the huge strong walls, and opened the door and dragged it in because of an arrogance, like, we won and they gave us this, the gods or the Greeks gave us this, and whatever, these people gave us this because we are definitely, they saw us as being powerful. And so they dragged the horse in, and they were taken over again from the inside. And the same way, all of these myths really have this story. Because if you look at the story of Thor, I think Thor, the last movie that was from Marvel, I think, and Thor had this brother, and his brother was, I forgot his name, but Loki or something like that. And Loki wasn't really from that planet or that kingdom of gods. He was from this demon world where once the kings of this world, Thor's world, I think it was Odin or something, his father, Thor's father, or something like Odin, one of these gods, or Zeus, but I think it was Odin. But Odin was the father of Thor, and Odin had at one time waged a war against the demon world, and he had destroyed it. But in his arrogance, in his last remaining bit of arrogance, he saw the baby of this other kingdom, of the king, it was a prince really, of this demon world, and he took him with him, and he raised him as his own child alongside with Thor. And so later, when Loki found out who he really was at a later age, from the inside, Loki could let in again other demons and other realms to take over the godhead, the kingdom of the gods, because he knew the inside stuff, where the gateways were and how the guardians of the threshold worked and how they were blocking, and so he allowed them in. Because it shows this arrogance. It shows this level where when you think you've won, and then you don't keep your eye on every vigilant, you don't keep the vigilant eye aware of every single possibility of arrogance, of this demonic level of being, of these thoughts that can slip in like a Trojan horse, or that can be led in by taking some other child and having a little bit of human type compassion, which is not real compassion, but it's like an attachment compassion, taking this child with you, bringing it into your own kingdom. The king, or the god, right? Odin the god took this other demonic child from a realm of lower consciousness and said, we're big, we're strong, we're everything, we're the light beings, we're the warriors of all, nobody can beat the gods, right? So I'll just take this child of this demonic realm and raise him as my own kid. And of course, for 10, 20 years it goes well, but by the time Loki had reached a certain age and figured out that he wasn't really a brother of Thor, and he wasn't as tall and strong and muscular and blonde hair and blue eyes, and so he felt always really like the demon playing inside of him. And then when he finally found out, he became the enemy from within. But that enemy is not Loki's fault. That was the king who, after waging the war against the demon realm, the lower realms of the demons, had taken in, he would still had this impurity. He still had this small bit of ego structure alive, and allowed it to stay alive, and kept it in the kingdom, which is the heart space, keep it in the system. And then one day it grew bigger as a teenager, and then in the 20s or something, when Loki was getting mature enough, he turned and was able to throw over the god kingdom because, this arrogance, this ignorance, this ego mind, even if it's 1 grain amongst the billions of tons, will still grow back into this darkness and will take you over. So for most people, they have to go back completely in the heart and then be eternally vigilant. And that is the real price that you have to pay for freedom, that you will always have to be eternally vigilant. And basically all the mythic stories of life, and that you see in the movies with these wars going on with the hundreds of thousands of soldiers or whatever, they're really embodying the fight between good and evil, which is the fight between awareness and your mind, or the ego consciousness. And really it's not a fight in the end, because all is well and all is God. But at the level of duality, the question is, do you give yourself, in other words, do you give awareness away to becoming aware of something? Do you become identified with the body and the mind? Or do you remain in the quiet space of joy and bliss and love? Do you remain in the kingdom of heaven, which is here now and does not go into these narratives of storytelling, identity, personality, person, stuff? So the war is never between kingdoms outside of you. The war is always between the kingdoms inside of you. The kingdom and the demondom, right? The realm of the demons, which is that which has been taught in mind and the narratives in the past and the future and all the mental ideas which are not true. The emotional, suppressed, unconscious fragments, and that which is the light, which is what you are here now. And at any moment, the question is, are you stepping outside of that gate, outside of that stronghold of the wall where goodness can be, maintained? Or you step outside of the wall and can get attacked? Or otherwise, are you going to be behind the wall but allow Trojan horses inside of your kingdom and be destroyed from within? Because either way, it's a battle between that. You either hold your ground in your fortress and don't let anybody in, but don't go out either and think you're strong enough to stand in the demon realms by yourself. Or you say, oh, well, I'm so strong and I'm over here, and get lazy and arrogant and then allow in a Trojan horse to destroy you like a virus within. You have to have the malware, the spyware functioning properly, which means eternal vigilance. So, know yourself and know the enemy. The enemy will be as small as a grain of sand and grow into a mad monster again. So stay eternally vigilant.